What if everything you felt wasn't an obstacle, not something to get over, but actually a new way of seeing? What if your deepest joy, your most intense pain, what if those feelings weren't just feelings, but were actually dormant senses, just waiting for you to turn them on?
So, we're not talking about becoming some kind of emotionless robot here. Not at all. It's actually the opposite. It's about a total transformation. It's about learning how to harness the raw energy of your emotions and use it to see a world that's usually invisible to us.
Welcome to the Last Guru Podcast, the podcast for all those curious and passionate about spirituality, which explores human potential from an evolutionary perspective, but also helps address life's practical problems at a higher level of knowledge. Today, we're diving into a really powerful, methodical path for inner evolution. Some call it inner alchemy, and it's all about that disciplined journey of turning our feelings into a brand new way of perceiving reality.
All right, so here's the roadmap for our journey today. We're going to break it down into 5 key stages. First, we'll look at what it means to have a science of the invisible. Then, we'll get into the really practical stuff, the alchemy of emotion, and how to balance our inner forces. From there, we build up to a really crucial moment, meeting the unconscious self. And finally, we'll see how it all comes together in this incredible realization about the universe inside you.
So, let's start with part 1, a science of the invisible. And right off the bat, I want to be super clear. We're not talking about vague beliefs or, blind faith. This is about a structured, systematic way of understanding our inner world, a real science.
So what does spiritual science actually mean? Well, think of it like this. It's an approach that treats our inner development with the same kind of rigor and discipline that a scientist would apply to the external world. A huge piece of this is the idea of evolution. Right? Just like the world outside is constantly evolving, so is our inner world, our consciousness. The whole point is to consciously take part in that evolution, to start investigating what's called the supersensible world, basically all the reality that our 5 physical senses just can't pick up on. It's a path of direct knowledge, not just believing in something.
Okay, part 2, the alchemy of emotion. Now that we have the framework, let's get into how it's actually done. And this is where the work really begins, where we take the most powerful stuff we have, our own feelings, and use them as the raw material for this transformation.
So how do you actually turn a feeling into a tool for perception? It's a 4-step process, and it totally reframes your relationship with your emotions. Step 1, you experience the emotion fully. You don't push it away. But, and this is key, you don't let it swallow you whole. Then, step 2, you detach your personal story from it. You stop being I am angry, and you start becoming the observer of the energy of anger. When you can do that, when you just observe its pure essence as this objective force, then step 4, you can transform that force. It stops being a source of pain and becomes a new tool, a new organ for perceiving the world. It's incredible.
All right, on to part 3, balancing the inner forces. Because this inner work, it's not just about changing one thing into another. It's also about finding balance, a dynamic equilibrium. True spiritual growth means we have to harmonize 2 fundamental opposing forces that are constantly at play inside us.
Okay, so let's look at the first pair. On one side, you have the force of I. This is your sense of self, your inner stability. What makes you, you? It's what lets you stand your ground, but if it's unchecked, it just becomes selfishness, right? Then on the other side, you have the force of surrender. This is your ability to love, to have compassion, to connect with other people, and really feel what they're going through. But if that's unchecked, you can just lose yourself completely. A healthy moral life is all about living in that tension, consciously balancing the 2. And this same idea of polarities plays out in the most basic rhythm of our lives, being awake and being asleep. When we're awake, our consciousness is focused outward, on the world. We're using up energy, processing information. But when we sleep, our consciousness turns inward. It's an unconscious state, sure, but it's where we restore ourselves, where the organism rebuilds. You absolutely need both. One can't exist without the other. And that rhythm, outward action, inward rebuilding, is a fundamental law for any kind of inner growth.
So, after all this disciplined work, transmuting emotions, balancing these inner forces, you eventually come to a kind of doorway, a threshold. And what you find on the other side, well, it's probably the biggest surprise of the whole journey.
Now, think about what you'd expect to see, right? So many spiritual traditions talk about meeting angels, or spirit guides, or some kind of external being. That's the popular idea of a breakthrough.
But this path says no. The very first thing you perceive with clarity in the spiritual world is an objective, unveiled image of your own self. It's you. Not the you on social media, not the you that you tell yourself you are, but the raw, unfiltered truth of your being. This is what's sometimes called the double or the unconscious self. See, in our day-to-day lives, there's a sort of protective veil that keeps us from seeing this. And for good reason, really. Imagine seeing all of yourself at once, all your hidden motives, the real consequences of your actions from past lives, the seeds of your future. It would be completely overwhelming without the right preparation. But on this path, meeting this self is the gate. You have to see yourself clearly before you can see anything else.
And then we get to our final section, the universe within you. Because once you've passed through that gate, once you've truly faced your own spiritual reality, the whole perspective just explodes. It shifts from being intensely personal to something unimaginably vast. And this idea is captured in a really profound statement. Every single organ of man is in relationship with the entire universe. Now, that's not just some nice poetic idea. Within this framework of spiritual science, it's understood as an objective reality. The human being isn't just a separate little thing living in the universe. The human being is a universe in miniature. This is the famous concept of the microcosm. You are a small world that perfectly reflects the great world, the macrocosm, the universe itself. And to reach this level of knowledge is to feel with total certainty that you're an essential part of the entire cosmic fabric. It's a state of deep, profound connection where your individual self finally understands its true place in the grand scheme of things.
So this whole path, this science of the invisible, is really a journey where discovering yourself becomes the same thing as discovering the entire cosmos. It kind of makes you think, doesn't it, that maybe the biggest mysteries aren't somewhere out there in deep space, but are actually right here, inside each of us, just waiting to be explored. We look forward to seeing you at the next episode of The Last Guru, to live with passion, because when the veil falls, trust and surrender reveal that no one is ever alone and never has been.